you got to have something that backs you up, because none of us are getting out of the deal alive, like legit.
Welcome to the Insurance Refocused podcast, where we're highlighting real agent stories and how they are innovating to respond to the changes and challenges happening in the independent insurance industry. My name's Lindsay, and I can't wait to introduce you to my amazing co-host, who just so happens to be my mom, Carey Wallace. Mom, how you doing today?
I am having a fantastic start to the week, Lindsay. I hope you are. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm having a good start to my week too. We're recording this on a Monday, and today at the gym, we're doing like new PR type work. Like we were doing squats today. Is like every Monday we're doing a different exercise, and I hit my new PR on squats. So that's awesome. Good start to the week.
Well, most of the time when you talk about working out, I have absolutely nothing to say. If anybody listens, I stay very quiet whenever she talks about her working out. But I started something new today too. So I'm in an accountability group, and we started 75 hard today, which is crazy, but I'm really excited about it. And I'm glad to be doing it with a really cool group of friends. So listen, it's a new day. We're getting wedding ready. I can tell you that everybody in our world is getting wedding ready. But I'm really pumped because it's not often that I get to have really old and dear friends on the podcast. And today is a special day because I get to have a conversation with Ted Rusinoff, who is the managing partner at Hall Green Agency, but more importantly, one of my oldest and closest friends in this industry. Ted, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you very much. And great to be here with you and Lindsay. It's a great service that you guys provide in our business, trying to help us all get a little more aware of the things that are important that we need to be paying attention to. So thanks.
Yeah. So Ted, you and I go way back, it feels like. When I think about my journey in insurance, I met you, one of the first people I think I met when I started at the State Association in Ohio. Mm-hmm. And I don't often miss Ohio. I've got to tell you, like it is 80 degrees here. It's sunny. I have a 4-minute walk to the beach. Like I got to tell you, I really like where I am. But when I see faces like yours, I do really miss, getting together for lunch and being able to see you at events and all kinds of things. So it's really, really nice to see you and catch up on how things are going with you. But for the people that don't know you as well as I do, give them a little bit of background of what your journey's been like in insurance.
Sure. I do not have a 4-minute walk to the beach. I know your walk. I've seen your walk. I've done your walk. But when I woke up this morning, there was snow on the ground here in Northeast Ohio. And, I've been in the insurance industry for over 30 years. For the last half of that, I've owned my own insurance and financial services agency. Over the last 10 years or so, I helped to build a network of property and casualty insurance agencies along the way as well. And recently, one of those members passed away while being the sole principal of the agency. And we needed someone in the network to step up and make the purchase. And my business partner on the financial services side had been looking for and trying to identify the right opportunity to purchase an agency. And this one just happened to be 2 miles down the street from my house. It was the closest member to us. And so I decided to throw my hat in the ring and, initiate some of that conversation with them. So that's how we get to where we are today. And that all happened. Matter of fact, the anniversary of the agency purchase was literally last week, April 1st. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So this is like timely. Really, really recent. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, before that, seeing that you helped to build a network, did you have any experience with this type of, situation happening before? Or was this kind of just this person needs help, let's do it?
No, you would hope that, the principles of agencies that were joining networks and understanding the value of connecting and building value, you would think they would have the right kind of planning in place. But if they did, you guys wouldn't have this podcast. You guys wouldn't have this business. There'd be a radically different landscape in our industry. I remember back to 2019 where we had 4 of our members die while being the sole principal of their agency. One of those 3 were in the active negotiation and were able to hand over the first check related to the agency transaction. They were able to collect the first one, but not the second one. They passed away in between the 2 checks. Sometimes I was working with the executor of the estate out in California, trying to help the family get properly compensated for the life work of their dad and the agency that they built. And other times I was helping the surviving relatives. In one case, a mom passed away and the daughter had to step in who wasn't licensed. I know you guys have talked about it where you have to convince the state that it's okay that this person runs an agency while they get licensed. And you have to convince the carriers that, hey, this is going to be a really good principle that you want to recognize. And that was the advocacy that we had to do on behalf of those folks. And that was my previous perspective, was as that mediator in the equation, not the buyer or the seller, but in many times trying to help, the seller get the value, the buyer have the right position in that relationship to move forward. And it was a little bit different being the buyer in this case, and even more different being the operator of the agency after the transaction. That's really where the eyes get open for sure.
Yeah.
So, Ted, we talk a lot about what happens to the family when an owner passes away and maybe the wife or the husband or the children, whomever, haven't been in the agency and they're trying to navigate this. But I do love the idea of, but what about after that? Let's say the family's figured this all out. They've been able to sell the agency. In my world, I'm trying to help them as fast as I possibly can so the agency retains its value as much as possible and it gets in the right hands. So whatever that agency owner had the idea for the future, their customers are still served, their community is still served in the same way. But I haven't yet told the story. But then after the sale, what happens? And so I love that you were able to be in those shoes, and you've been a couple years outside of this. 2 years, right? 2 years, April 1st.
This is the second year. Yeah.
Which, by the way, April 1st, really? What were you thinking about an April 1st close date? Come on. What are you doing, man? Anyway, it's funny. Did you tell people, bought an agency, April Fools? That's funny.
People that know me well think that that's par for the course. The people that don't know me well, they look at that and they're like, well, what in the heck were you trying to do? And the reality is, and I'm walking through this transaction where the guy was sick for about 18 months before he passed. He passed away in September. They're going without an agent leader on the team, without a principal, through the fourth quarter of the year. There's decisions that need to be made if you're an agency owner in the fourth quarter. And there was no one, at the helm. And we were moving into the next calendar year. And now there's decisions again in first quarter that had to be made. And there's some strategic decision making on renewing different software platforms. There's just a lot in the ownership activity that you need to be tending to all year long, but even more importantly, kind of setting the stage in first quarter. And I stepped in and said, how about I help manage this for a little while we get the rest of the deal transaction stuff sorted out. And, to get the financing and all the pieces put together took 60 days. And so I started running the thing February 1st, but didn't close on it until April 1st. And April happened to be the 60 days that it takes to get things done. Would have been more fun if it was like May 1st, although that's May Day. I'm not sure that's exactly the sound we want to have at the closing,
No.
but that is how our story kind of unfolded. And to your point of being the buyer in this environment, in the previous transactions, when I'm working with the executor, I'm trying to figure out what they want out of the deal. Is there a number? Is there some structure value? Is there timing? We're trying to sort out those elements, and we're doing it very much after the fact. And we don't get to set the value quite the same way as when you plan for it in advance. When I was working on the one where the mom passed away and then the daughter stepped in, and I've got to say we have some incredibly kind, really good humans in our industry that will step in and walk side by side with folks and help them move through the process. And that's a beautiful thing. It's one of the things I love about our business.
Agreed.
There's just good people out there that are trying to take care of folks. But in this case, there was some transaction activity that was going on. He was trying to sell the agency when he got sick and just couldn't find the right fit. Was in the middle of trying to negotiate something when he passed away. But the network had a right to approve and kind of manage that process a little bit. So I just asked the question of the attorneys representing the widow. And I said, what do you want? And what does she want out of this transaction? And, they said, we can't tell you that. I said, well, time out. You can't tell me because of an NDA, or you can't tell me because you don't know. And they said, well, we don't know. I said, well, as you're representing the seller, how about you take this list of questions that I'll give you that you can go back and talk to her about, and then come back with some answers to what she really wants in the transaction. And she really wanted the name to stay. She wanted the employees to stay. She wanted the customers to be well cared for. She wanted the agency to stay in that location and sign a lease with the building because she wasn't selling it. Like, there was a number of elements that she needed to have in that transaction that were not present in what they were likely going to have if they went down the path with the previous potential buyer. And so walk through it, negotiate. You realize there are not a lot of people that know all the things about the agency. You have to talk to every single person to get their puzzle piece, and you're trying to put them together, still missing 6 or 7 puzzle pieces because the owner holds so many of those pieces, in their own list of things to do. But, we got it put together well enough. The banks thought we got it put together well enough. They gave me the money. So that's how we ended up getting it done over the course of about, 4 months from the time that we found out about it and started helping the widow walk through the process and then start managing it and then eventually purchase it.
So that's important to say, like, people don't have any idea how long things like this take. And the fact that you did it in 4 months in that situation is impressive. Like, that is atypical. There's typically, if you had no awareness, if you were not part of the network and you didn't know this agency, and that's an easy 6 months, because it takes a while to even get your arms around what do we have, and then how do we figure this out, and who do we talk to? And that delay causes uncertainty. That uncertainty causes people to get nervous, your employees, your customers, your carriers, and therefore the value of the agency could drop. You said a couple things. You came in and operated the agency, which stabilized that situation, I'm assuming, and it only took 4 months, which sounds like the only in that sentence sounds ridiculous, but that's a true thing. Tell me what happened with the people side of this, because we know that's the value of the agency, right? So give me an idea what happened to the people.
Well, you have no idea the question you're really asking.
Oh, I do.
The day I walked in and announced to the office, hey, congratulations, we closed. It's officially, mine, and here we are. Let's rah. One of the women in the office followed me to my office and turned in her resignation. So,
Oh,
she
goodness.
just wanted to take a break. Her mom was actually the one that had passed away, that I had helped work through the process. And she had been 3 years trying to run the agency, merged it up with this one, just wanted to step away from the book that was her mom's and her grandpa's, that she was third generation in that, in that practice. So she just wanted to take a break from it, which I totally get. So welcome to your first official day wearing the hat, and you get to deal with the thing that, most of us would say is the hardest thing, is getting the right people on the bus, getting them in the right seat so that we can get the bus going in the right direction. Like that, that literally walked into my office within minutes of it. The ink wasn't even dry. Or the digital signature wasn't even fully, digitized, but it was definitely an interesting scenario. And then, fast forward about 5 months, we had another individual there that just wasn't a good culture fit. A lot of extra drama when drama isn't actually necessary, and was having a hard time processing from working for someone that kind of plucked her out of obscurity, working as a barista, at a coffee shop, and invested in her to become a part of their team. And she was mourning the loss of that person in her life, and every day showing up in the same place where she used to work, where he used to work. And, she needed to step away from that as well. Yeah. And the cool part in all of this, and I had been somewhat anticipating that, hey, we're in this environment where we're undergoing a lot of change, and we're trying to do the right things, trying to do right by the previous owner, trying to honor the work that's been there. This agency's been in the city for 90 years. It's not like it's some fly-by-night operation. I'm trying to honor the relationship it has with the community. I'm trying to bring in the next set of people that will help support that into the future. And we were standing around, we do a thing called the Cup of Joy. And the last hour that the agency is open before Christmas, we turn off the phone, we lock the door, and we stand around and look at each other with a drink and a snack. Like it's not as awkward as I just made it sound. And and we were basically,
thank God.
we were basically just saying, what we're grateful for over the year. And, so that's December. We're, 8 months into the gig and 9 months in. And one of the producers said, if you would have asked me last year at this time, if we could be in a place that feels this good, I would have told you were out of your mind. I don't think it's ever felt as good as it does right now with the people we have, with the work we're able to do, the confidence that I have that I can do what's needed for the customer when they call. Like this, that was a huge, huge compliment to where we were and what we worked through in order to get to that place, essentially a year after I got involved in conversations trying to sort out what's next. So,
well, actually, that's kind of hard even to think about, simply because you're in a hard market. Like, think about the power of that statement. There's a lot of people saying, I'm not able to serve my client. I'm not able to answer their questions. I'm not able, I feel in a different way. So hats off to you for being able to get the people to that level, which is a difficult thing. So, what about your carriers or your partners or referral partner? Any of the things that make the agency perform? How did that all work out?
Well, the previous owner was very engaged in the community, and so the referral partners were all over the place, and they were coming in from associations and groups that were a part of the Kent environment, and so there was really big shoes to fill in that context. And what I would do, it kind of is my motto, and I'm a big fan of Atomic Habits, James Clear, like the whole that whole approach. And so the idea of just getting a little bit better every single day, like that's how I try to live my life. And in this environment, I was like, I'm just going to do the best I can every day.
You have to, right? You have to.
then I'll put my head down on the pillow and I'll get a good night's sleep and I'll wake up and I'll go after it and try to do the best I can the next day. And that's really all you can ask of yourself. And that's all I can, ask of my team. And so I was meeting these other relationships that the previous owner had for years and years and years. And I'm trying to introduce myself as, okay, I'm not him, but I want to do what I can to support the work that has been done and that we can do together going forward. And for the most part, it's been great. We lost the largest account of the agency 2 weeks before the loan closed. And so we were battling with that. But what it ended up actually making out was, okay, well, that person left on the day it closed. And that account left, and that kind of balanced things out. Like that was okay. It was like one of those things you have to look at the whole thing and then kind of walk through it together. I sat down with our largest customers, in the first few months of owning it, getting familiar with who they were, starting to build an independent relationship, out of the shadow of the previous owner and into the light of where we are today and what we're trying to do next. And that's gone pretty well. I haven't met them all yet. We had 1,800 customers. There are a lot of them I still do not know or have not met. But I can tell you that it's been pretty positive working through the process. The folks that really, really, knew and loved the previous owner, I think are in there. It was good that there was enough time for them to mourn the loss of him before there was a new person in the chair. In that context, there was some benefit to the time that lapsed, but at the same time, some of those people are our customers, and they would say to me, I was wondering what was going to happen. After he passed, I was wondering who was going to be my person. And then you have to work through, well, it's okay now, here, I'm here. It's an interesting balancing act there.
But you didn't have the benefit of him introducing you and saying, "Hey, I trust him as much as you should." So, that's a challenge, because what the current owner has to say about you is very, very powerful. What you did have is the owner was so revered in that town or community that maybe that was to your benefit. But that's a challenge. It's a really big challenge. Yeah.
When he's not there because he's gone, and you can't ask him a question. Just 2 weeks ago, I needed to contact a fairly good sized commercial account that we have in the office, and the notes were not quite as good as maybe I would like them to be. I'm calling. There's no voicemail to leave. I'm trying to get a hold of the owner. Like, this is a real account. I went and drove by their building. They really are there, but there was nobody there when I was there at 3:00 in the afternoon. And I went back in the office. I said, "Who knows this account?" No one knows the account. Not a single person in the office
That's not good.
knows anyone at this account. So that's a real challenge when you don't have someone that can say, "Hey, this is Bob, and Bob owns this place, and he's second generation, and this is what he likes, and this is what he doesn't like." And I don't have any of that help. I sat down with the two producers in October, and I said, "What do our customers expect out of us in the holidays?" And he's like, "What do you mean?" I said, "Do we do things for them? Are they expecting me to send them something? Do they get a gift? I haven't been here. One of them's been there for like 3 years, which means he was there for about 6 months before the owner got sick, lived through the 18 months of illness, and then the next 6-8 months of not having anybody. That's his experience of the agency, which isn't normal. He doesn't know what the normal looks like. The other one had been there for like 20 years, but was building his own book and wasn't involved in the larger agency book that often. So there's these push and pull moments where, okay, so who are we? Well, nobody really knows. Okay, so what do we do? Well, I'm not really sure. All right. So now we have to try to define it.
Yeah. Wow.
It's a lot easier to build when you have raw materials. It's a
Sure.
lot harder to remodel when there's already walls in place that have like load bearing requirements and you're trying to navigate around that, although you don't have the blueprints to work with. So it's a little challenging for sure.
So how do you make decisions in an environment like that? Like, how do you, make the tech decisions or lock in for contingencies or things that a normal agency needs to do to operate when you don't have the puzzle pieces in front of you?
Well, we have some really good carrier partners. So I will tell you, having conversations with them, and some of them I knew because they were part of the network. And so some of those leaders I was very well aware of and could sit down and say, hey, this is the book. And I'm looking at the book. And, for 10 years, I was in charge of looking at the books. So I even knew some of the books in this agency independent of the
That's
purchase.
good. Yeah.
So, so that it's good to have good carrier partners. I would also tell you that as you look at like the tech stack that we have, we were paying for things that we weren't using. And I would ask the question, why do we have this? And nobody would know. So then I would have to go do the investigation on, is it actually serving a purpose inside of what we do? And in some cases, the answer was no, we're just spending money. We were spending money on a cable bill, but we had no TV in the office for actual cable service. So I'm like, okay, that's pretty easy to fix. We don't need that bill anymore. But then we're paying for an agency management system that we're using much more like a glorified directory than we are an actual agency management system. And that didn't seem right. And so we've expanded that. We trained the staff a little more on some additional functions, building more controls around how we input the data and manage the data so that it can be more meaningful and valuable. Because, if you listen to this podcast or just about any other one in our world, data is really important, and knowing what you have and knowing how to use it is important. And
sure,
so we're working on making those things better. We did go paperless. My daughter started to work for us, and that was one of the projects that she headed up to get all of our customer files scanned in and added in. And one of the interesting quick side story on that, because he had made that purchase of the other agency about 6 months before he got sick, that hadn't been integrated into this agency yet.
Oh, so wow.
Oh,
there were 40 boxes of files that were at the previous location that wasn't a part of this transaction. And so I had to, like, in that February, March, when I'm in the management phase of it, I'm hauling boxes from one location into the other location, filled up an entire office full of boxes, and then started sorting them out and figuring out, like, is this even a customer that's active in the system? And had a lot of scanning to do, had a lot of filling up our agency management system with those kind of documents and really supporting the system with the right data. It was quite a project, but we celebrated that by the end of the year, literally like the last week of last year. We scanned in the last folder, and so we got paperless in 24.
That's amazing. I don't know who, I do know who it was. It was, as you were saying that, Ryan Pessel, who's an agent in Ohio, bought
he's a
an
Security
agency.
Advantage member. I know Ryan.
Yeah. So he was on our podcast and said when his father or his grandfather or whoever the previous owner was, I'm going to get it wrong. It doesn't matter. The previous owner would say success was when they had to buy another filing cabinet. That would mean that they're growing and expanding. And he, he showed a picture where there was no filing cabinets, where it used to be like, 20 of the big ones, like 6-drawer filing cabinets just lined the hallway. So I get it. Going paperless is tough. There's an agency in Connecticut that was purchased, single operator, It took them 6 months just to piece together what the client list was in order to come up with the price for the agency, because they didn't have anything. And every folder was a policy. So you didn't even know what this customer's whole portfolio was, because you had to get through all the folders to figure out what that customer's number of policies were. It wasn't like it was just one customer. Yeah. So it took a while. No question about it. And same thing, can't ask questions. So you can't say, hey, if that owner was standing there and you said a person's name, I guarantee they can rattle off what they've done for that customer for the past 30 years. But you don't have the luxury of asking that. And if you've got a new staff or someone that's heads down, only focused on it from their perspective, you don't have that luxury, and you've got to figure that out, and you got to do it fast, because you bought this agency and you don't want it to be a retention problem with something that you've already purchased. So it's a challenge. There's no two ways around that. There's a lot to think about when you're the buyer of an agency where the key person isn't there as a resource. There's just no two ways around that, right?
I'll tell you, one of the biggest challenges, and this is going to sound like no big deal, but it literally is probably the thing that has sucked more of my time away from the things that I would like to be doing. Too many of the systems, whether it's DocuSign or even in some of the carrier systems, he was the only admin. So we want to talk about DocuSign wants me to pay the bill, but I'm not allowed to pay the bill because I'm not the admin. But they won't make me the admin because somebody else is the admin. But sure. I don't have his email account, number one. That's another problem. That we could spend days on that. I don't have his laptop because that was his personal laptop that his family kept. And his desktop computer didn't have that account on it. So let's go down some layers of drama that you unfold. And so it's a legal process with DocuSign to get them to recognize the successor to the organization as a new admin. And that's weeks of emailing back and forth and, help tickets and you need to have. If you don't have a successor plan, whatever, if your succession plan is, we'll get to it. Okay. Not cool, but at least have more than one admin on all of your tech stack in order to make sure that you have someone else that can still do the things that need to happen inside the agency.
Yeah. For the agency that I was telling you about, they couldn't get some of the carriers to respond to them because he was the point of contact. And, they had the customer list, but they wouldn't. And thankfully, the buying agency had a relationship with some of the carriers. So I mean, it's sad, but they basically bent the rules in order to help. Otherwise, you just didn't have access and you don't know. It's things you don't think about that don't seem like massive until they are. And the byproduct of it is you're not serving your customers. Like, you don't even know who to serve, unfortunately. Yeah. So
I was at a regional meeting with a few other agency owners that I had become very good friends with from my time at Security Advantage with them as regional members. And they were, laughing at me a little bit and cheering me on at the same time to say, it's good to have you on the owner side and be in this conversation. And some of them bought from their dad, two specifically. And I said, how many conversations did you have with your dad in the course of running up to the purchase and then after the purchase? And both of their dads are still alive, so they still are having conversations with them. And I said, now take all those away and do it without that. How do you feel? And he goes, I don't feel like you. I'm like, thanks. I appreciate that. But it does have its own challenges. And so, I would encourage really everybody to have the plan in place, to take the time to say, okay, if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, I can't answer the bell, whatever, what's going to happen next and who is going to be available to support what that path looks like going forward. Because that's an important part of the the equation. So.
Absolutely. Well, Ted, looking back, this is like the last question I want to ask. Looking back at those transactions that you had helped on before you went through this experience, is there any like big takeaways that you're like, oh my gosh, I wish younger Ted would have known about this. It would have helped so much, other than just have a plan. I mean, obviously have a plan and write down all the things and make sure there's admins on the account. But is there any other like big picture that you would want someone to know?
You know, I look at how personal agency ownership really is. You know, if you think about just about every single person you guys have had on the show, or, you know, Carey, the number of people we know in common that they step into the role of owning an agency and they really care about the quality of the work, the promises that they're making, and the expectation they have of both those promises being kept to staff and those promises being kept to customers. It's just, you got to have something that backs you up, because none of us are getting out of the deal alive, like legit. We're like, it's certain that we're not going to live forever. And I think too many times we put off that aspect, even though it's so critical to making sure that the thing we care about most, the promise, is being kept. The most important thing to doing that is making sure that they can be kept, even if it's not us keeping them. And we let that fall away. And you don't have to do it with a big, you know, crazy, expensive, complicated agreement. There's ways to just communicate internally within your staff in order to make sure that if I wasn't here and the phone rang tomorrow, would you be able to answer it and answer the question and take care of the customer? Okay, that's a very big different operating environment than everybody playing things, you know, close to the vest and keeping things on their desk. I made the comment very early on in this in the purchase. I said, we're going to be able to work from everywhere and be able to do whatever we need to do, no matter where we're at, because that's who we need to be. And prior to my purchase, you could only work in the office. There were no laptops. There was no mobile capacity. And so you would have to go to the filing cabinet and you would have to pull the file out and you would have to read what's there, and then you could respond. And I'm like, that's not who we are, and that's not who we want to be. So we've taken some big steps in that direction, and it's made it possible for the phone to ring. Anyone could answer it, and that customer or whoever is going to have the ability to get served in the best way that we can. Might not be 100%, you know, like it might take 2 phone calls. It might take another person getting involved. All those things might happen, but we would be able to help them and serve them in a way that they would feel well cared for, which is really our focus.
I love it. Well, Ted, thank you so much for coming on. We normally at this part of the show say if someone wants to reach out to you to get advice or, you know, have some camaraderie of like, I've gone through this too, this was absolutely terrible, or this, you know, I have a different perspective. Where can they reach you?
I'll take all the best ideas at ted@hall-green.com for anyone that's already lived through it and said, here's the light at the end of the tunnel, and make sure you take this left and this right to get there faster. I'm all for that email.
There you go.
I'm also, as I said earlier, I'm a big fan of Atomic Habits and, you know, getting better. And nobody's got a monopoly on good ideas. We could all share and learn from each other. So don't hesitate to reach out, ted@hall-green.com.
Thanks, Ted.
Thanks for coming on, Ted.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much for tuning in to the Insurance Refocused podcast. If you enjoyed the episode, please be sure to hit subscribe and leave us a review so you'll never miss us. Want to learn more about how Agency Focus can help you grow your agency? Head to agency-focus.com or email Carey directly at carey@agency-focus.com. If you need to get in touch with me, feel free to shoot me an email at lindsay@agency-focus.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week.